So Bill Ackman has been absolutely obsessed with defeating Mamdani, writing his 2,000 word screeds on X about why Mamdani has to be defeated. If you remember, Tucker Carlson, I think it was at TPUSA, mentioned that Bill Ackman is actually a pretty dumb, mediocre guy. And if you look at his record as a financial advisor, he's done terribly. He's lost money for his clients in bull markets. You got to remember, these people are not rich because they're better than you. Most of them are rich because they're luckier than you, because they won the sperm lottery. Very few of them are actually rich on merit. Um, and this is a case in point. So he shares this article, worth a read on the TikTok algorithm tipping the scales in the NYC mayoral election. He's talking about the same TikTok that, in anticipation of its takeover by Larry Ellison, the largest private donor to the IDF, hired an Israeli IDF veteran to run content moderation. That TikTok, he's saying, is slanting the algorithm. All right, so let's see what they say. TikTok is allegedly putting its thumb on the scale to help far left New York State Assemblyman, I was like, what? Zoran Mamdani win the New York City mayoralty, a new report claims. The Chinese-owned app's algorithm is, quote, distorting the playing field in New York City's mayoral race by amplifying pro-Mamdani content while suppressing videos backing his opponent, Andrew Cuomo, according to a Tel Aviv-based tech insider who cited a key leaked document from the social media company. Quote, early evidence points to algorithmic influence that may be shaping voter perception in the New York elections. Yohanatan Dodeles, if that ain't a Star Wars name, I don't know what is.
Yohanatan.
Yohanatan Dodeles. Yeah, this is the ship that made the Kessel run in 7 parsecs. Wrote in a Medium post published Tuesday. Oh, well, it was in a Medium post. Well, clearly, this is not a complete waste of the reader's time. You got a lot of sound bleed there, Keaton. By analyzing millions of videos, they set a normal rate for how often posts are typically displayed on users' feeds, then looked for topics that got extra unexplained promotion. Political videos, especially those supporting Mamdani, were shared far more often than expected, while pro-Cuomo videos appeared less often, Dodeles claimed. This is, I mean, if you're smart, you can already see how stupid this claim is. They're claiming that there is literally no explanation for why TikTok would be sharing and producing, why the content creators would be producing more Mamdani videos than Cuomo, and why people would be sharing more Mamdani videos than Cuomo. And this is a very good example of that lack of self-reflection. You have to be so far up your own ass to not understand that a platform that skews towards younger people is going to skew towards the pro-Palestine candidate. They can't imagine that there might be the explanation that it's rooted in who uses the platform and the fact that you've entirely lost young people. You've entirely lost them. Like that's it. No, it has to be China manipulating the algorithm of this platform that is now run by an IDF veteran. Okay, so what's the age breakdown there? 18 to 24 years old, proportion of U.S. TikTok users, 2025, 27.2%. Now, it is kind of interesting that it seems like it's dropping off a little bit. I would argue that it's because of the algorithmic interference. Some of them are looking for alternatives, but that's my own speculation. 25 to 34, 39.7%. So basically a full 2/3 of people who use TikTok in the year 2025 are under the age of 34 years old. It does not require some conspiratorial theory about China interfering with the algorithm to understand why it's primarily who the hell what 20-year-old content creator do you think is for Cuomo? What user on TikTok in this age range do you think is for Cuomo? The fact that he even shared this as if there was any credibility really demonstrates what a mediocre intellect he is, as Tucker Carlson indeed claimed.
Well, they don't care. I mean, they don't care. I mean, that's a recurring pattern. Is they don't care how obviously wrong they are or how ridiculous they sound. It does not matter.
Right.
I mean, cults operate in that way. It's almost like the more absurd your claim, the more credibility you gain within the cult because you're expressing a willingness to debase yourself for the cult.
Right. So here's a good example. This is from Censored Humans. Pro-Israel supporters trying to convince young people on the streets of America that Israel is the victim. Watching young people's reaction to their attempts of brainwashing. Israel lost definitively the narrative and lost younger generations forever. So this is pretty funny, man. This Zionist influencer goes out there thinking he's going to corner people. He's got a picture of the two who were killed outside the embassy, trying to say, well, you support Palestine. Look at these. Yeah, he doesn't get what he was hoping for.
Images of Jews being burned. You feel good about yourself?
Palestine always.
So do you support terrorism?
I support Palestine. Thank you, bro.
Free Palestine! Fuck Israel! Free Palestine.
That's how you want to end this? Free Palestine? Free Palestine in front of this image of dead Jews? Really?
Free Palestine.
Really? Free Palestine in front of these images of two Jews that were killed?
Free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine till I die.
In front of this image
free
of dead
Palestine,
Jews?
free
You
Palestine.
know how that makes you look on camera?
F***ing Zionist, inbred f***ing idiots. I don't f***ing care what a settler has to say.
It's just anti-Semitic.
It's against the state of Israel. Zionism is a settler, white supremacist state.
Are you anti-Israel?
I am.
Okay.
Okay.
I love how he thinks they look bad. Like, you don't think you look bad on camera showing a picture of the two who were murdered in D.C. and saying, you're going to say free Palestine while looking at them? That's like holding up a picture of the white girl who was killed by the black guy in North Carolina. I forget her name. And saying, are you really going to say Black Lives Matter while looking at this woman? Yeah. No. Laken Riley was the immigrant. This is the Ukrainian who they were all, trying to gin up a race war about. I forget her name. She was killed by a black guy. So if you put a poster of her and then you're going to say to somebody, are you going to say Black Lives Matter while looking at this picture? How dare you? Like, the fact that somebody was murdered doesn't mean I don't believe in civil rights anymore. No, of course. They don't understand how ridiculous they look. There's something broken in them. They just don't get that you actually look like an emotionally manipulative man-child by putting that person, by making them answer that question in that way.
And it also shows how they think. Like, I'm going to make you fear that you're going to suffer social consequences for having this opinion. He goes right to that. So now here is Bill Ackman getting a little bit more into why they're so determined to stop Mamdani and why they have not been able to. This was a banger. A lot of the right-wing libertarian kind of accounts are sharing around, the billionaire fuckers, and they get done sticking it in the wall. They open up their mouths for the billionaires. Cares more about being in the spotlight, Curtis Sliwa, cares more about being in the spotlight for 2.5 weeks than he does about New York City. He makes that abundantly clear in this clip, and this is the clip we actually showed where he says, you want voters, go get them. Why it's called democracy. You tell me who is being the jerk, his words, and he is wrong. I have been a New York State and city taxpayer and resident since 1988. Just in the last decade, I have paid $480 million of state and city taxes and donated $350 million to New York City institutions. I have done my part to help New York. New York City needs more billionaires, not less. The city works because the millionaires and billionaires pay the taxes and make the donations that support the entire community and the institutions and services that make NYC great. Zoran Mamdani says billionaires should not exist. Zoran says he is an existential threat to me and other billionaires. That's not a smart strategy for raising the revenues that keep the city solvent. And yes, he is also a jerk. Okay, so I'm going to recommend these two books to you. If you want to understand modern New York, if you want to understand how New York got the way that it is, what the politics of modern New York are, this is the best book I've ever read on 1970s New York, which looms very large over every political contest in New York. We don't want to go back to that. We don't want to go back to that. That's definitely read that. And understand the gentrified, Disneyfied hellhole it is now. Vanishing New York, Jeremiah Moss. Those two books, if you're curious, if you want to understand more about what's going on here, what dynamics are at play here, those two books will give you a pretty good education. So Bill Ackman talks about what he pays in city and state taxes. And you'll get a lot of people will say, what, you want to go back to the 70s? You know how bad it was in the 70s? Yeah, man. No reasonable person says, yeah, you know what was great? 70s crime. We need 70s crime back. Nobody says that. But when they cleaned it up, they didn't clean it up for the New Yorkers, for the average working New Yorkers who wanted it safe. What they did was clean it up for people like Bill Ackman. The developers then went in after Giuliani sent out his shock troops and made it acceptable to people like Bill Ackman, not fearing they're going to get shot going through Central Park. They had to do that. Once they did that, the developers started to rezone neighborhoods, wipe out working class affordable housing, and completely recast these neighborhoods into things like the Hudson Yards development, or as I call it, the Borg ship, that people like Bill Ackman would want to live in. Is it safer and cleaner? Sure. For who? For people like Bill Ackman. That's why he likes it this way.
Right.
When he talks about the money that he's put into institutions, this is money that's gone into institutions that most New Yorkers don't experience. Museums, Lincoln Center. They can't afford that, and they don't have the leisure time because they're breaking their asses trying to survive in New York City. So that's, yeah, it's safer and cleaner for him and his fucking class. That's why they don't want it to change. So moving on. So now what he's saying here, and it's not surprising that Bloomberg is actually the top donor to Cuomo at over $8 million, because this is very much the city that Bloomberg built. This is from 2018. According to reports, New York is under siege, vanishing, empty, or already dead as a result of the Bloomberg way. The concept of the mayor as CEO, businesses as clients, citizens as consumers, and the city as a product that's branded and marketed. Bloomberg's corporate worldview drained the color out of New York City, a sterile, relentless kind of destruction that dehumanized its victims with the logic of the market. When he imagined what the city could be, his mind settled on a high-end mall filled with expensive accessories. And that increasingly is what it has become. Quote, if New York City is a business, it isn't Walmart. It isn't trying to be the lowest priced product in the market, he explained at an economic conference in 2003. It's the high-end product, maybe even a luxury product. If you couldn't afford the product, the Bloomberg way was to push you out. The billionaires were a godsend, according to Bloomberg, and the bigger income gap in the city was fine because everyone's income was going up. For someone who purportedly loved data and math, numbers failed him here, because when median household income for all renting families goes up by 16%, while the median contract rents rise by 25% or more, as they did from 2005 to 2010, that's a net loss for families, especially when the cost of food, childcare and transportation is also rising twice as fast as incomes. So that is what the city has become under this stewardship. Now, people like Bill Ackman would have you think that because of billionaires like him paying taxes, actually that is redounding to the benefit of working New Yorkers. Well, what is the state of New York after decades of these kinds of policies, of this kind of economic philosophy? You can't argue, and they're really not making an argument, that we need to take the government away from left-wing people. It's that they want to continue what has been done under Giuliani, under Bloomberg, under Adams. They want to continue this vision of New York as a high-end luxury product with basically the trickle-down logic. The rising tide lifts all boats. Well, how's that working out? How's that working out? 1 in 7 New York City public school students were homeless last year. That is a record. A new report found that more than 154,000 NYC public school students, nearly 1 in 7, experienced homelessness during the 2024-25 school year, the highest number on record. Well, that is largely owed to Michael Bloomberg, who not coincidentally is Andrew Cuomo's biggest donor by far. By far, Bill Ackman, 500,000. Michael Bloomberg, 8.3 million. 8.3 million. These people are such scum. They care so little about average people. Even seeing what the results of his policies are, he's willing to put millions of dollars into the campaign of a sexual predator in order to make sure that the people whose lives he shattered with his policies don't get any relief from those policies. This is how determined they are not to be repudiated in any way. He doesn't give a shit that this is the outcome of the city that he helped to build and had arguably more to do with building than anybody else. What about infrastructure? All these billionaires are paying for infrastructure. Power grid's falling apart. Power grid operators warn NYC could face increased blackouts as early as next summer. So why is Mamdani burying Cuomo? Well, it's partly that they ran an odious predator pig as the establishment candidate. That's certainly part of it. Part of it is this. You can't make the argument to people when you keep hitting a new record every year of homeless school children that you guys have done a good job and you should be kept in power. You can't make that argument. You can't tell people they're not broke. They know if they're broke. You can't tell people the city is doing well when they can't afford groceries, when they can't afford rent. You can't tell them, oh, no, you don't want to freeze rent. That's gonna make things really hard. For who? They keep talking. Cuomo in the debate, he kept saying, Bloomberg froze the rent, and it was a disaster for it. It wasn't a disaster for me. I'm a renter. That was very nice, having a couple of years of no rent increases.
You're talking about you mean de Blasio.
Oh, I mean
Bloomberg.
de Blasio, yeah. Not certainly not Bloomberg. Yeah, de Blasio froze the rent for like 2 years. See, and this is part of why this doesn't work. When Cuomo goes up there on stage and he starts talking about what a disaster rent freezes were, anybody who experienced that rent freeze is saying, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? That was great. That was great that my rent didn't go up.
Yeah, that's a huge percentage of the city. I mean, what is it? 40% of units are rent stabilized, something like that?
They were saying in the debate it's 25% that are rent stabilized. But you have to take into account also 1 in 8 units is NYCHA. 1 in 8 units is a housing project.
Right.
York. So, at that point, you've got...
it's like 40% of available units to the general public
are in some way under public management.
Yeah.
So Mamdani, this was a funny thing. What's the name of this show?
I guess Flagrant 2.
Flagrant 2?
Yeah.
All right. So he went on this show, which is kind of a Joe Rogan aligned manosphere kind of show. And he got on famously with these guys, and he talked a little bit about how much money Bill Ackman is spending against his campaign.
I think this idea that like New Yorkers are going to flee because of a 2% increase, it's like, I've been everywhere else. You're not going anywhere.
Come
Bill
on.
Ackman's not going nowhere. He's going to be in the Hamptons all
There's
fucking
only
summer.
one place to write those tweets.
That's it.
New York City.
Exactly.
Every character you want.
AC goes
Write 'em.
out in July in Miami. You sweating writing tweets? There's
He's
no way.
spending more money against me than I would even tax him. Every day it's like $1 million. It's like $1 million. I'm like, Habibi, I don't even want that. You're going above and beyond.
Yeah, they cannot allow a guy, or don't want to allow a guy like Mamdani to become mayor, because it's also a repudiation of their entire legacy. It's very much why Obama decided to get involved in the DNC chair race when Keith Ellison was running. It's very much why Obama very determinedly blocked Bernie Sanders from getting the Democratic Party nomination. It's very much why the Clintons always mobilize against any reformer. It is a repudiation of their entire political legacy. And with that repudiation will also go control of the narrative, control of how that history is told. They know that you give people any relief if you break out of this horrific moment in history that they have partially been the architects of, and you start talking honestly about them, they're going to be persona non grata in polite society, because clearly they are modern day robber barons who help to destroy quality of life throughout the country. That's why I think this is interesting, even though, yeah, it's a local New York story. It is very much a microcosm of what has happened in the country during the same time period. You know, New York in a lot of ways has been the ultimate laboratory for neoliberal economic theory. And you see the result. 1 in 7 school children is homeless as a result of these policies. And New Yorkers know that. And this is why it is not effective when they get up there and say, well, you don't want to change things now. They gave you decades to deliver the city you said you were going to deliver. And now they're willing to take a flyer on this guy. Yeah, he does have very little experience to be taking a job like that. You pushed people to a point of desperation where they're saying, fuck it, I'll take him over the molester.
Well, yeah. I mean, the what's going on in Maine with the Plattner race is indicative of how this has kind of spread, right? It's not just a New York thing. New York was the first domino to fall among many. And the fact that Mamdani was able to hang on that Schultz show, in that Manosphere show, is an indication of a changing dynamic. You know, a year ago, those shows were really branded more MAGA, and a guy like him just would not have been on brand for them to have on. Oh, we're going to have this woke DSA guy on our show. Like, it would have, they would have said, no, we're going to lose too many subscribers over this. But you know, now
you could
they're
also
able
see,
to, they're able to hang.
You could also see his talent in that he was able to go with that vibe.
Oh yeah,
he's a very good
body
politician.
language. Yeah, he is very good. Like, he is able to, his whole body language, he felt very comfortable there. There's a whole bit where they bust his balls over the bench press thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just rolls with it super well, and has them all, you know, laughing and cracking up. So yeah, no, I mean, there's definite talent there, obviously. And it's just hilarious how Ackman is not letting this go. He keeps doubling and tripling down. At this point, don't you understand that the more you go all in against this guy, the more humiliated you're going to be? Don't you understand it's not working now? Don't you understand that the way to save face now is to just kind of admit that you failed and you move forward? But no, they are going to go all out, do whatever they can. Now it just came out, Eric Adams endorsed Andrew Cuomo. Yeah, once again, all the worst people you could think of endorsing Andrew Cuomo. Yeah.
Well, because New York is like the jewel in the oligarch's crown. And like aristocrats throughout history, they are too narcissistic and too much in a bubble to accept that they have lost the people's trust and love. And being narcissists, they would rather kill all the people than let the people tell them what to do. They think they have the divine right to govern society, and that in the end, society is there to serve them.
Exactly.
Please clap.